welcome to the Virtual Ball Boys podcast. My name is Chris, and I am joined once again by my good friends, the Mats.
So, Chris, I wanted to do something for this episode.
Okay.
So, I want to take note from the critical and commercial successes that were Ready Player One and Space Jam: A New Legacy, and kind of change my commentary and change my the way that I do podcasts to entirely reference humor. So throughout the podcast today, I'm just going to be making video game references so that when the listeners hear it, they recognize it and then they chuckle.
No, it can't just be that. Did you guys not see Space Jam: A New Legacy? Guys,
that's what the movie was, though. They just made references to everything, right?
Guys, Big Chungus was in the movie.
I just have like a sense of dread that has come over me about this podcast. I've kind of regretted now starting this recording.
Chris, you sound like your princess is in another castle.
Son of a bitch.
I was scared to take a picture because I was worried that the Warner Brothers gods would come down upon me for illegally taking their property and taking a picture of their movie. But guys, you just got to take my word for it. Big Chungus is in the movie.
And just to put the bit aside real quick, Walsh, what was your honest to God opinion about Space Jam: A New Legacy?
Honestly, I thought it was going to be worse than it was.
Okay.
Like it was surprisingly pretty. Like I was at least surprised. Like I had my expectations pretty low, but. I mean, if you don't get too hung up on it, it is pretty fun. I mean, like, I found myself and the person I was watching with just the whole time making jokes like, oh, I can't believe they got rid of Lola Bunnies. Who is this? This isn't the Lola I know. Or
Did Lola flirt with LeBron?
No.
Okay, I saw like one line where she was like, "Oh, you're bigger than all my exes."
Oh my! No, that is 100% fake.
Okay.
that is probably people just wanting to like just make stupid fucking jokes about it.
I had to know.
Yeah.
If I were to really, I know this isn't a movie podcast, but if I were to really nitpick, I mean, some like Lola feels a little bit out of character in some places. But overall, it just feels like a kind of fun movie. It's like, oh, that was fun. And then if you think about it too much, some things are a little weird. But
they really just want their audiences to go in with no thinking power and just take in all their intellectual properties.
No, I thought it was fun. I mean, there is, of course, like the fun of like, oh my god, look in the background, it's that guy.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Matt, I'm looking forward to this entire podcast just being references. And we will have to deal with them as we are modifying our rule set that we've been working with for the VBBFL, because we're just in full VBBFL mode. I mean, at the end of the day, we're kind of going at a slower pace than we did last year. I think at this time last year we already had all of our teams drafted and we already had the rules set up, so we're kind of late bloomers this year. But forgive us, it's just other things have occupied our minds, and also I feel like we're less in the setup phase this year, and we're more just kind of like in the usual grind of just getting everything together, and then we'll be all set to go as when week 1 comes around. But that will be the majority of this episode. But we do want to start off with just a little bit of housekeeping for the NFL, because up to this point, there really has not been much going on in the NFL. It's just been mainly a lot of just nothing stories that don't really matter. There's some interesting things that have come out in the last few days. And we thought we might as well just talk about them at brief. first off, with Cam Akers, he suffered a ruptured Achilles, unfortunately, so he'll be out for the 2021 season. Darnell Henderson is expected to replace him, and of course, Darnell, excuse me, Daryl, excuse me. Daryl Henderson will be replacing him. What I guess, what is this impact for the Rams? In your opinion, Matt? Because for me, I look at it, I'm like, I feel like it's just the same kind of situation for the Rams, where it's just they're gonna use as much of the running backs that they've had behind them to kind of carry them forward, and they're gonna rely on Matthew Stafford really slinging it.
Yeah, the thing was with Cam Akers though was he showed a ton of talent last year and was really like, out of all the running backs that they had, he was the one that really stood out and could be. A lot of people were predicting him to be the one to kind of like become the next Gurley for this offense, and that's kind of what I was thinking too. Like they would have done committee stuff like they did with Gurley, but Cam Akers was going to definitely be the focus, and Akers definitely had the talent to do that. So it's really unfortunate. The Rams were actually going to be like a dark horse Super Bowl pick for me. And I was very highly considering choosing them for the NFC, and I still might.
Right.
But this really hampers it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and yeah, Cam Akers did have a solid season last year. I think for me, it never felt like for me that the team was going to kind of move away from what their usual strategy was, which was which was to kind of like use as many running backs on the back, or kind of cycle through the running backs over the course of a game and not really rely heavily on one or the other. I feel like it does hurt that he's gone. I don't know if it really changes my opinion of the team a whole lot, though, because I do think that I'm more interested just to see what Matthew Stafford does at quarterback and seeing how that impacts the offense as a whole, because I think that alone will probably increase their chances than what they were last year. I think it's probably a setback to, like, you know, were they gonna be like world beaters with Cam Akers and not anymore? I don't know. Like, we will never really know what the impact of him being there would have done for that team. I don't know if it's gonna have as huge of an impact. As personally, at least from my point of view, as I think some people were projecting. So that was one of the news stories, and then the other one that came out was that Melvin Ingram, the longtime Los Angeles and I guess San Diego Charger as well, he is now with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Matt, for you, looking at the Steelers defense, what does this do for you?
Terrifying. As a not Steelers person, like, just getting a veteran of this caliber on an already really, really good defense is terrifying. Is the best adjective to use here. Yeah,
100%. Yeah, I'm like, I feel bad because I felt like, you know, he had been part of the Chargers for so long, and you would think that would, you know, that the Chargers would continue wanting him to be a part of the team, but I get that as, you know, time goes on, you know, it's just sometimes, you know, someone overstays their welcome. Maybe it's just not worth it anymore to be having him there. I don't know, but I do think that this is a big time get for the Steelers, and I think that him alongside TJ Watt is, it's gonna be trouble. It's gonna be trouble for that team, and I still don't have a whole lot of confidence in that offense, but, you know, again, I think back to, like, you know, 2019, where it was a lot of, you know, what was it, Duck Hodges? I almost said
Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, I almost said Duck Newton from our little Adventure Zone podcast. But yeah, like those guys are like the fact that they were almost in the playoffs because of those guys. I could totally see the Steelers still being like a wild card team if they don't like win the division. Yeah. So, and I think it's just good because that defense is as solid as it is. So, yeah, it's a scary bunch. And one thing I wanted to acknowledge too before we move on to the rule stuff, because I forgot to address it last few times that we recorded, I guess. The Carl Nassib of the Raiders.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He came out officially as gay. And he just posted it on Instagram, and he could become the first active NFL player to be openly gay, to play in the regular season. Hopefully he doesn't get cut, because that would suck ass if he did.
Yeah.
But because I don't think he is a starter. But I think that's just such a huge important step forward for the NFL. To just to continue to have a space where players that are gay, and we keep on hearing from openly gay players now that have retired saying like there's more gay players in the NFL that we know, that they're just scared to kind of like reveal themselves to people, and so comfortable.
This is a really important first step. And then also an NHL player recently came out as gay too. I forget his name because I don't follow the NHL. But
yeah, I remember seeing something like that. Yeah.
The more players that do this, and the more players that feel comfortable, it's going to embolden more people to share that aspect of themselves, and then also let other people know that this is a thing.
Yeah. No. I think it's just like getting rid of this toxic masculine culture of like, oh, I don't want like a gay person in my locker room. Like it's just like this whole distorted, fucked up, this idea that people think that like football locker rooms, their reaction to, or just sports locker rooms in general, and their reaction to someone coming out as gay. Like I hope that stigma, that idea that is there, I hope that just gets washed away, and that people are as accepting as it seems that people have come out as being for Carl Nassib, and hopefully for more NFL players in the future, feeling more comfortable just to be who they are at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And with that tied up, we're just you mentioned the Aaron Rodgers tweet. I'm just at the point where I'm like, we've talked so much Aaron Rodgers. Tell me when he.
Yeah, but it's funny to make fun of him.
It is funny.
And make fun of the Packers.
It is funny.
Just know, those of you listening out there, anytime that news comes out about Aaron Rodgers, or mainly when Adam Schefter tweets about it, I will be making. I am always making fun of them.
Yeah. I'm like, let's move on with the story. Like let's see the next step. Is he actually going to sit out of training camp? I guess we'll see this week.
We'll see. I used to be an adventurer like you, and then I took an arrow to the knee.
Okay, so we're gonna move on. It's time to talk about the VBBFL rule set. This whole we went through the trial run of this whole thing with season 1, seeing what we liked, what we didn't like about it. As someone who watched the gameplay of all this from the outside, but also drafted a team and it helped create this rule set, what are your thoughts about how the first season went with VBBFL?
I thought the first season went really well. For anybody, if this is their first episode of Virtual Ball Boys, do you guys want to, give like a quick description of what the Virtual Ball Boys Football League really is?
Sure. So it is a fictional football league that Chris and I put together. There are 8 teams. Our friends are drafting the teams to fill out certain positions that we assign for them, and we're definitely going to have to figure out different levels of positions again, maybe move the numbers around a little bit. But But after that, we once we have the teams, once we designed all of them, you can listen to the past 8 episodes to hear the teams that we made. And then we simulate the games throughout the regular NFL season. We stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/TeamChaosProductions and see how this imaginary football season plays out.
Awesome. Yeah.
Anything else to add, Chris?
No, yeah, you summed it up pretty much as I would have as well.
Cool.
Because sometimes I'll talk to people and I'll be like, oh, the Virtual Ball Boys Football League. And they're like, oh, when is that? Or it's like, oh, where should I hop on? Like, where should I start with it?
Yeah.
But yeah, so...
I mean, this is the best time to do it because we're kind of... we're basically finalizing everything over the next month or so, and then we will be off and running in week 1, and that'll be however people want to latch onto it, and
but yeah,
ride it out.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on to help make the rules even better.
Yes.
As not only somebody to help make it, but then as a player, I thought the rules were working great while I was winning, and then when I lost. I decided that the rules that we have in front of us right now, we're going to throw them all out, and I have completely new rules now. You guys are going to be playing rock, paper, scissors.
Okay.
And whoever can do the shoot, like the pistol motion, let's say like you do the rock, paper, scissors, but then when you say shoot, instead of rock, paper, scissors, you choose gun, then you win. But if the other person also chooses gun, then you both lose.
Is this prisoner dilemma?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, I'm all for it. Let's do it. I think that concludes this episode of the Virtual Ball Boys podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. Now, I would say for me, like I enjoyed it. I thought, I think the biggest, well, I just enjoyed coming up with the scenarios and coming up with the bits that we did. I think that there was times where I felt like the, scenarios were it was hard to keep on coming up with interesting things that were happening in the game outside of just like, okay, so and so player takes the ball, runs it in for a touchdown, and it's hard to keep on making those interesting, but it kind of helped where we had characters and we had storylines to build with those characters. I think my particular favorite was the Eggman song bit.
Oh my god, that was amazing.
Which is so I thought that was good. That was a lot of fun. And I think the one thing I want more of is a lot more character building overall. And I feel like it could be a lot, and it's not something that I don't know if we can incorporate into the rules. It's something that I want to keep in mind for this year. Is just kind of a, how can we kind of engage in a story telling point of view more than just like this is the game, because because as much as I enjoy like the game element of it, I've grown to love tabletop games, and I've grown to love what Walsh does with Table Party, and I've grown to love listening to Adventure Zone or whatever. I love tabletop games. I love the story being told with those games, and I would love to see how much we can try to tell a story with each of these teams in a more, unified way, even if it means kind of game planning ahead of a stream or something, like things that we want to kind of try to tell while also having the results of the games be still like kind of up in the air. What about you, Matt? Yeah.
Definitely something that we can try to think of. I think of Chaz McFreely last year as probably being our wildest storyline.
Yes, yep. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Blaming all of the problems on him, and then when the team got good, have him be the turnaround.
Oh, I think that's the thing with him too, is that like he's a character of a series that is not well known. That is totally our niche, and like,
Yes.
we enjoy doing it because we want. I for me, the reason that I really started doing it was just because I wanted Chas McFeely to have some sort of bigger role in the team and just to have the stupidity stand out. And that's gonna happen where you're gonna have like, you're not gonna have every member of a team be interesting. It's not feasible for us. But as long as you can have those one or two characters that can tell a story, as absurd as it gets, like, that's,
we can make it work.
Yeah, basically that's where I'm at. What about the rules themselves? What's something that you liked or didn't like about the rules?
So I think that the setup, the pacing for things was perfect for what we had to do. It was great. 12 kind of 12 total rolls per or sets of rolls per game. Because we have to do a lot of games, we do 4 games a day. That's just a really good amount to keep things moving along and have enough substance in the game without it necessarily overstaying its welcome.
Yeah.
I think that the one thing that we can improve on, though, is the defensive stat was broken, I think, from a total game design standpoint, and we saw that with the one team that had a positive defensive stat ending up winning it all.
Yeah.
And not to say that that's why they won, but it is kind of why they won.
Yeah, I think part of it was what I failed to kind of address early on was I felt like I felt like one thing that could have been more of a factor is like field goals, and we didn't incorporate that, and we didn't talk to Walsh about that. I think that was my biggest regret, because I was like, because then as we kind of went along, like, you know, Phoenix City had this great offensive stat, but it totally did not work in their favor because of the fact that they had they had such a terrible stats for the other two more important stats. And for me, it's just balancing out, like, let's make sure that defense isn't as powerfully this strong stat, and instead have it be that the offense carries just as much weight as the defense, as much as, you know, ball handling carries. I mean, I think ball handling might end up still maybe being like more powerful than the other two, but I think that if you don't have really good stats for offense or defense, that those flaws can stand out. Whereas with Mansfield, it was this defense that was so strong that the weak offense and the weak ball handling didn't really as much stand out because they kept on stopping teams. Yeah,
and I think that So one thing that I think we could do, and I think we've brought this up at some point, is if the team wins their first check, the offense versus defense check, and then fails the score, they still get a field goal.
That's how I see it.
Yeah,
like they get into range.
Yeah, they get into range get into range because they still need to attempt a field goal. And make the field goal. But I think that does a few things. One, it makes the offensive stat more important, because the offensive stat was the least important stat. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
Because when you had advantage and when you had a high ball handling stat, the offensive score itself didn't matter that much. This allows it to at least get them into field goal position, and give them the chance to kick a field goal, while also, like, you obviously still want to be decent in ball handling to score the touchdown. Another thing that we'll do is kind of decrease that ball handling's importance a little bit, where before it was, okay, you have advantage with ball handling or disadvantage with ball handling, but you still have this huge boost. You still have a +6 in it. So the value of having a +6 in ball handling, while still good, will come down a little bit because there's still the opportunity of the field goal. It's less necessary. It's still good, but less necessary.
Right.
Walsh, what do you think?
Yeah.
So here are some ideas that I've already been kicking around in my own head that I want to share with you guys. And just to make sure that I have, because I'm coming from a I was about to say table party, a tabletop point of view rather than a football point of view. Of course, to go for a kick is much different than a field goal. A field goal is you have not made it for a touchdown, but you are going to try to kick it anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Basically.
So now let's say if you make that kick from a distance and it goes through the giant chicken wishbone.
Yes.
Do they get a point?
3 points.
3 points.
3 points.
3 points.
Okay, so then my proposal for that is, and if you guys see, we have different documents open. We have the rolling guide, and then I just put season 1 there because I just didn't want to touch that one. I just copied and pasted it into a new document that I labeled season 2.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me open that one.
But I was thinking that maybe we can have it where, let's say, they fail. You can still have the chance for a field goal, but give it a higher DC. So, if you were going to go for a kick, it is only a DC of 10 that they have to meet or beat in order to make that kick. Maybe if they go for a field goal, it is a higher number in order to actually get that point. And I also, with the other things, I really feel you guys. That was definitely a big thing that we noticed where offense didn't play as much of a role. Defense became incredibly important because it was being rolled for everything, and ball handling was also a very important role. And just to kind of recap the rules for maybe somebody, if people need a refresher from the last season or they weren't tuned in last season, the way that it works is have team 1 and team 2. So let's say team 1 has the ball and they're playing offense while team 2 is playing defense. It's you roll one team's offense versus the other team's defense, and then depending on how that goes, the offensive team could have advantage or disadvantage on a second roll of ball handling against the other team's defense. So then the only thing that the offense really affects is whether or not they're going to have advantage or not. And I wanted to propose that instead of defense being so important because it gets rolled twice, I was thinking the first roll for both teams, whether being offensive or defending, could be offense rolls. Because you know what they say, the best defense is a good offense. And then offense becomes its own kind of exists in a world of its own that affects advantage and disadvantage in its entirety. And then it's just ball handling versus defense.
I see what you're saying. I don't think that translates well to the idea of football, though. Like I think it's a goal for us to try to merge the two. I definitely know what you're saying. Maybe we can get different nomenclature for it.
What I was also thinking too, because I'm with you in terms of trying to make the offense more important, but I also know that here was what I was kind of thinking too, is that if we had the first roll stay with the offense versus defense, I was thinking the second roll would be a ball handling battle where it would be two teams rolling for ball handling instead of one ball handling, one defense. I know that I know that that does put a emphasis on the ball handling working out and having ball handling be like a good stat, but I think that if the offense succeeds in the first roll, if the ball handling doesn't work out, at least that team has the ability to try for the field goal at that point. And so if they don't have a great ball handling stat, they could still get points on the board. And then most likely, maybe their defense stat's pretty good, and then they can at least just win the low scoring games or something like that.
Do you guys think it would help us to change words, change the stat names from offense and defense to something more like, I don't know, like movement and power. I don't know if those are immediately applicable, but something along those lines.
I don't know.
Because then my thoughts on what Chris was saying was, then I feel like the ball handling becomes incredibly important, because if we look at it, each play has two roles to them. And while the first role affects the second role, it is that second role that carries far more weight to it. It is that second role that determines whether or not a touchdown occurs, which was why I was immediately thinking, oh, it could be offense v. offense in the first role, because then it's like I need a good offense whether I am, playing, I have the ball or not, so that I can, help myself on the second role. And then even if the second role doesn't go well, I can still now have my field goal option if I have a team with a high offense.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a team with a high offense, I can get advantage more often. And if that still doesn't work, or I can get advantage more often, or I can cause the other team disadvantage more often. And I can help myself that way, and while I might not have the ball handling or defense to help it, I can get myself a field goal if I have the ball.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a good defense, then I can, I might not be able to, I might be up against a team that's going to use advantage, but I can now actually defend myself. I can have a +6, because to me, having a positive modifier, something like a +5 or +6, is far more important than having advantage or disadvantage.
I agree with you there. I do still think, though, that trying to make it analogous to the NFL, or to real football is important for me, at least.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And the concept of, okay, this team is really good at offense, but they can't finish, is a type of team that exists in the NFL that kick a lot of field goals.
Yeah.
The Arizona Cardinals, as an example, are a high offense, low ball handling team.
Mm-hmm.
In our scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I also here's another thing too. And it might be extra work for us, but we could do a fourth stat.
I was thinking that.
Like where
that does complicate things a lot, but
it does. But
could do it.
In the sense of like where it's offense versus defense the first time, and then we do ball handling versus something else the second time, and that way you're only rolling each of those once, because then ultimately the kicks are kind of like their own thing, because it's whatever that individual's ball handling skill is, that's what the kicking roll is.
Yeah.
I mean, but it would be more work.
It would be more work, and yeah.
It would be more work to do a fourth stat. That's why I'm trying to think of how we would approach, because I understand what you're saying, Walsh, because then it would put like an emphasis on ball handling, and it does complicate matters a bit. But I also
I have another proposition.
Go hit me with it.
Could we adjust the defense stat itself so that it's not able to get as high as the other stats? So that we don't have +7s in defense. We could do up to like maybe +4, but like if we stat out a team and whatever limit we decide, +3, +4, if a team goes above that threshold, then we need to restat them. Something like that, just so that a busted defense stat cannot exist. We still use the defense stat twice, but it's not busted. Thoughts on that?
I guess we could figure that out, but I don't want to take away the notion of like a powerful defense either.
Right.
You know? I Here's what we could do. We could keep the stat the way it is, but on that second roll, have it be weighted a bit. Have it be where they're a little bit exhausted because they've been run over in the drive, and have it be that the defense is exhausted from trying to defend this team, even though they're still on the field. And you can have it where your defense, like instead of it being the +7 of, let's say, the Weavers was last year, it could be that for that role it's like +3 or +4, where it does get like knocked down like a half peg because of exhaustion and because of the fact that the offense won the first time.
I can see that working.
You know what I mean? Like that. You could still have it where the offense versus defense decide an advantage or disadvantage.
That really that advantage and disadvantage really sets things up, because if the defense wins the first roll, they're going to be at full strength essentially for that second check.
Mm-hmm.
And then if the offense wins that roll, that gives offense even more reason to want to win that check.
Yeah.
And then the defense gets knocked down. I don't know if we should have it, because that gets weird for negative numbers. But if we did we did a -2 on defense if the offense wins, if the offense gets their advantage.
Well,
I feel like that would.
This
I don't know.
This might be a simple solution. What if the defending team only rolls once? And the defending team rolls their initial... actually, hold on. So, let's say Sorry, I'm collecting my thoughts.
That's fine.
If you have the offense versus defensive roll, and if the offense is lower than the defensive roll, let's say it's a 5 on offense and a 10 on defense, the team 1 now has disadvantage on the roll, but they only have to beat the first defensive score.
They don't get to
roll
10.
Yeah, they don't get to roll a second defensive score.
I don't know if that solves the problem of the defensive modifier still being used for both things.
Yeah, because I think the defense is still super powerful. I think that you knock down the defense either way. I think that ultimately what the advantage is for the offense is that they get to roll twice to take the higher number. That's the advantage that they're going for the offense. I think the defense is going to be exhausted no matter what, because I think even if they are trying to do a good job, even if they are, kicking butt, I do think that there is a factor of exhaustion that comes into play in football, where the defense is on the field for a long time and they get tired and they get winded and they can't tackle a team anymore. So I think that you have the defense get knocked out in both situations, where you have it be that it is only this little bit to overcome, but the disadvantage for the offense, if they were to lose the initial roll, is that they would have to take the lower number of the 2 against a defense that's at least a little bit weaker the next time.
That is true. Yeah, they still have to take that lower number.
Yeah.
We're definitely at least I am. I've been thinking of this in terms of very defensive teams. I've been thinking totally in Mansfield's headspace in terms of okay, we have a 7. You have to beat a +7, then you have to beat a +5. Similarly would be I guess there's not too much difference between a -1 and a -3. It's still it's a little bit of a change, but it's not. But I think it would be, I do think it would be enough for that defense stat to get nerfed a little bit while still having value, and then that would also give the offense stat a little more importance.
Right. I mean, and when we're saying -2, I mean, I think a defensive stat that big, I think you go from... I think there's a certain point where we could look at it at a defensive stat and be like, okay, instead of just subtracting -2 for the second part, it's going, dividing it by half. I think you bump a +7 down to a +3.
The one problem with that is with negative numbers, would we double them then?
I think for... If you're looking at a smaller defensive stat, I think then you can just do -2. I think if the defense is only one, I mean, I guess you could divide that ish. I mean, you could just have it bumped down to 0. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you could have it like I think you can have it where we kind of have what you were suggesting, Matt, where it is that there is a nerf there, but is a kind of on a curve where a less powerful defense is going to kind of stay at like the same power consistently, whereas a more powerful defense is going to have its peak in the first roll and then have it be kind of lessened in the second roll.
I feel like I hear what you're saying. I feel like it's a little bit arbitrary, but this is all arbitrary, so.
Well, I'm trying to think of the best way we could do this, because again, like I don't want defense to be overpowering. I don't necessarily want I don't want any of these stats to be overpowered.
Right, that's the difficult part of this.
Because that's why I think a fourth stat would make sense, even if it is more work. Because again, at the end of the day, then everything is just rolled once. But I understand that we're trying to figure out the best way for things to kind of be, factored in, and I don't know if I feel like I kind of like what Walsh was suggesting, where you have it where what if you start the drive, the offensive ball handling, the offense does not roll yet, start with the defense rolling, the number that they roll ends up being the number that stays the same throughout. And then you have it be where the offense goes for it, and then that decides an advantage or disadvantage roll, and then the ball handling goes. I know that doesn't necessarily fix the overpowered nature of a defensive stat.
Yeah,
but
because you would still have to, like, if they roll a 12 plus 7, 19, you still got to beat a 19,
right? Which
you may or may not have the ability to do that.
Right. Yeah. No. I think the only play then is to do a fourth stat then, because I don't know if there's any other solution.
All right. Thoughts on a fourth stat? Ideas, including strategy, luck, or some sort of proficiency bonus? The silence.
No. I'm just trying to think how we want to.
There's no good, like, in terms of from football. I don't think there's a good word to use that would fit in here.
Because it's defense.
It's defense. They're playing defense.
It's
no
defense.
Matter what.
It's whatever the opposing team is doing is defense.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be that we do defense and then the other stat's goal line defense. Like, or we just refer to it as goal line.
Just goal line.
Well, we could split that into two if you really wanted, like, blocking and tackling. Or I don't know what the proper terms would be.
That's not a super bad idea. Offense versus blocking, ball handling versus tackling. It's not a 1-to-1 comparison, but...
Yeah, I mean, blocking usually is referred to as from, like, the offensive line point of view.
Offensive line, yeah.
You could have it where we do offense versus pass rush, maybe, and then like offense. Because I mean, I'm looking at it from a perspective. I'm looking at it from like the drive point of view. The first play to me is you're starting from the 20-yard line, your own 20-yard line. You're trying to work yourself down the field. The second roll is that you're on the opponent's 20-yard line. You're trying to get into the end zone now. And I'm trying to think about how much defense changes between when you're all the way back there and when you're a little bit closer. I think that
prevent defense. That's what they teach.
Yeah, well, so prevent defense is goal line defense. I
thought it was. I don't know. I'm thinking.
I don't
bend
know.
don't break maybe is what I was thinking of. That doesn't translate, but
yeah.
So there's the one where they run with them and they're on top of them. That one is called hand holding, and the goal defense is called hugging.
I don't think we could do that.
Go perfectly with the ball handling.
We make too many ball handling jokes for us to be that wholesome.
And the offense, we're going to change to thrusting.
Right. Right. Yeah, I'm down.
So wholesome versus dirty, depending on which one.
Man, we've spent a half hour trying to discuss this one particular.
No, I know. So,
all
right. So this is what I'm going to propose, is that we do some play testing, because we're not going to be able to. I don't think we're going to be able to theory this out in terms of what will work. We have a ton of opinions, and we obviously have a lot of experience in terms of what we've liked, what we haven't liked. But until we put the dice to the table, or put the dice parser to the Discord chat, we're not going to totally know which one of these ideas are going to work. And I think that the one that's solid for us is, if you get offensive advantage, you get to attempt a field goal. I think that rule for us is set in stone. Yes.
Yeah. No. I think that's that just makes offense more important. Yeah.
So I think that, I don't know, at least start there and see what happens from there. Because like with a low defense stat, like just thinking of Mansfield as an example, just because they were the black sheep of teams in terms of stats. They did not play in high scoring games at all. They did not score that much because their offensive and ball handling stats were so low. So other teams who may have gotten advantage on that first one, but then couldn't beat that ball handling check, are now going to get field goals. Are now going to be able to get more points than Mansfield was initially letting them by doing that first roll well.
You know what? I feel like just leaving it at that offensive advantage and then seeing how that goes might be good.
Yeah. And we can play test before the season. In fact, I think we should play test this a couple times before the season starts, just to see if that does solve the problem of defense being overpowered. If that one check that can beat them is enough.
Yeah. Because we have to remember too, like, Mansfield, yeah, like you said, Mansfield was stopped quite a few times.
Yes.
And not to say that, like, they could probably kick each time if it's really bad for them. But I like the idea of having it so that way you could, in theory, not worry as much about the team's defense and just hope to field goal the fuck out of the situation to hopefully get, like, instead of losing 7-0, you win 9-7 or something like that. Mm-hmm. You know, and just hoping for the best of that front. But I do think that, like, if the offense wins the advantage, then they can go for the field goal. If they get the disadvantage, then they have to go for the touchdown, and if they don't get the touchdown, they don't score. And I think that's
correct.
That's the bottom line. But then, yeah, we're gonna have to play test. Hey
guys, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, if do you want to do it where if they get advantage, they then decide whether to go for a touchdown or a field goal?
I like that.
Or
more.
What?
You can finish what you're saying, but I like that more. What I was thinking.
Okay. Or they, if they get advantage on the ball handling and then they fail the touchdown for the ball handling, then they can try a field goal because they got advantage on the offensive score.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, my mistake. I think that if they do get disadvantage, they should have the option to kick a field goal. Because
wait, they get disadvantage?
if I mean, I don't know, because then if they get a disadvantage on the roll, I feel like there should be an option to, instead of going for the touchdown, they say, okay, we don't think we can beat this defense, let's kick the field goal. I think that makes more sense, because then because what happens is that if it's only for the advantage, the whole point is to make the defensive stat weaker in general. So
it's a
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry,
no,
I keep interrupting you. I should stop.
No, it's okay. All I'm saying is that, like, if we want to make the defensive stat weaker, it would be that if a team can't beat that defensive stat, that they still have the option to score in a different way, which is through the field goal.
They have an in a different way. They can bypass it to still get some points.
Now,
I think that is I think that again, we should play test it, but I think that could work decently.
Yeah, because I mean, like, you could, like, and in theory, I think you could have the field goal option for both scenarios, whether it's advantage or disadvantage. But I think if you have the advantage, you do go for the touchdown, and if it fails, I think you can still kick the field goal because you got the advantage.
That's what that's I'm down for that. If it's disadvantage, you have a choice.
Yes.
If it's advantage, you have the backup.
Right.
You have it as a backup.
That's how I see it. You have to, with disadvantage, you're forced to decide at that point whether to go for touchdown or field goal, because you can't go for both because you got the disadvantage.
Yes.
So I like that as a combat to the defensive stat being as overpowered as it is.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Walsh? Okay. I know it's a lot. I have to.
Football brain.
I'm trying to put it into words better, but I think it is. I think Matt said it well, where it's for an advantage, it's kind of a backup option if you can't get the touchdown. If you get disadvantage, it's that you either attempt the field goal or you try for a touchdown, and if you can't do, whichever one you choose, if you don't succeed, you get 0 points.
Does anyone here have an objection?
No.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think
the last thing I would want to hammer in for this field goal rule is, how does a DC of 15 sound?
A little high. Gonna be honest.
Well, all right. Yes. Well, I guess it could be different for either circumstance, right? Because if they get the advantage, then I guess you could still have it be a 10.
Have it still be a 10.
But if it's a disadvantage, it's a 15.
It's a 15. I guess the kickers are also going to be
overpowered.
Like most of them are going to be 4s or 5s.
Yeah.
And we should when we're assigning stats, Chris, we should make all the kickers 4s or 5s.
Yeah, we should. No, I think that's usually what we try to do anyway.
Yeah.
But I'm with you, where I think that if we're going to have this curve, that's how we attempt it. That's how we approach it.
Then I'm okay with that. So it's a 15 on disadvantage for the PAT and that's point after touchdown, Matt. The point they score after they score the touchdown. Mm-hmm. Or for the advantage field goal, because the advantage field goal should still be like relatively the same spot if we're thinking field-wise.
Yes.
Then DC 10, and then disadvantage, that's a 40-plus yard kick. That's a DC 15.
Yeah. I'm with that.
Cool.
So we might have to write that down, because that's going to be very confusing early on, but I think we'll get used to it as we go on, as we get through it. And yes, we will still play test it. We'll kind of make sure, but I think that's the best solution that we can have come up with there, without having to add more stats.
Yeah, I think that what we're on right now is good.
Yeah, and we'll test some things out. All right. Just a few other things before we get going here. Schedule. I want to propose something for this one. Just because what I noticed with last season was just motivation for me was not always there to kind of go out and set up a stream and get everything ready for a stream. And it kind of ended up elongating the regular season for a good bit. I would be down just shorten the regular season from 10 to 8 weeks. If that sounds okay. Because to me, I think
I will.
Because I think about it from the perspective of like, we have the pattern that we kind of follow is doing it every other week.
Yeah.
And I think that that will give us enough room to kind of have the 8 weeks done throughout the regular season. And then I'm thinking after the divisional round weekend for the NFL, that following weekend will be the start of us. Start our playoffs, and hopefully we wrap up prior to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. The schedule will be a little bit weird.
Yeah.
It'll probably be not every team is gonna play every other team. Probably what will happen is we'll still probably do the 2 division games per team. So team 1 will play team 2 twice, team 3 twice, team 4 twice, and then like team 5 and team 8, but not 6 or 7. Right.
I think that's okay, because I think I don't think we need to have every team face each other. Like, it's not. It was fun with the context of like last year where we were awaiting the Anaconda Phoenix City showdown.
Right.
Like, it's fun in those instances, but I'm okay with the idea of like not having every team face each other and then having the.
Who knows? They can meet in the playoffs,
and they could. What could be fun is having 2 teams that didn't meet in the regular season meet for the championship. I think
if that happens, that would be amazing.
That adds like a little bit of extra spice for the championship, where it's like, okay, we haven't seen this matchup before.
So that schedule should work out. If it's 8 games total, they play 6 division games, 2 non-division games.
Yeah. I think that's fine.
Yeah. It's gonna be a lot more. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it mirrors the NFL, because that everyone
right.
the NFL can't play every single team,
Right.
Yeah,
works for me.
Were you gonna say something right before that?
I forgot if I was or not.
Okay, cool. So we'll move forward. All right. The last thing, locations. So I've been. The only thing about the whole thing about the location thing, the reason why I'm doing this and the reason why I wanted to implement it in the first place was, again, to kind of talking about what I was about one thing that I was hoping for more of for this season, which was adding a little bit extra story, extra character. Because when we are theoretically playing these games at these football stadiums last year, it's hard to kind of explain the environment outside of it's a football stadium, and there's not much happening there. And I know that there doesn't have to be, but I felt like it would be fun to have some elements of worlds that we know of kind of incorporated into not so much the gameplay, but even just the storytelling. Like the idea of the audience having a factor in, like, having a factor in the game, or some sort of obstacle coming up in the middle of the game that has to do with the environment. Like having it be I'm all for nonsense. Like, I'm all for things going wrong, things becoming catastrophic, and scores happening that would not happen in normal football, but will happen in the VBBFL. So I feel like having these worlds kind of incorporated into that could add to the chaos of it. And I think what could be fun is having it where the characters of these worlds that may not be drafted onto these teams, excuse me, just knocking over bottles here, that they're not part of these teams, but have them like on the field for whatever fucking reason, and like that they are preventing the team from scoring, or that they are allowing this team to score. Just some sort of chaos with that. I want to know
weird shit.
Yeah, I want to know what your guys' thoughts are on that, and how we could go about like dealing with that, because I want it to feel comfortable for people. Like, I don't want to like, this was a bit that I've kind of inserted into this, but I wanted to make sure that like we're all on board with the idea, because if we're not, I can just scrap it. We don't have to.
So as you and I being kind of the role players here, I think it totally works from a role play standpoint.
Yeah.
And we use these things to explain the dice rolls.
Yeah.
the reason that that I rolled the natural 1 and knocked fucking the reason that Sans Undertale got knocked out of the game was because the platform from Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout came up and hit him in the fucking face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I'm 100% with that, and so I love that. I love that we have those that in mind. So then my only question is, are we comfortable with the games that we have listed thus far? And so I'm just going to go over them one more time. Right now we have Fall Guys, Sonic the Hedgehog, Paper Mario, Overcooked, Danganronpa, The Legend of Zelda, Pokemon, and Grand Theft Auto.
I'm good with them.
You're good with all of them. Like you don't feel uncomfortable with any like scenario.
No, yeah, all works. All works for me. I would maybe like, I don't know if this is possible, but stick to car and city-based stuff, Grand Theft Auto, rather than guns.
I'm down for that. Yes.
Because we have like the cartoony guns on some characters.
Yeah. Like
Samus's arm cannon was a big thing, but that's very fictional. I would rather just keep real gun violence out of things.
I am 100% with you on that.
The person who gets a real gun is Shadow the Hedgehog.
Right. Yeah. Right.
I think it would. I feel like the GTA universe. I'm with you. I feel like a lot of it is going to be revolved around cars. Maybe I'm trying to think of other shit that's gone down, because a lot of what I think my knowledge of the game is really GTA 5. I picture like I don't know, because the weapon side of it kind of is a part of the game, but we could have it where it's more, we kind of maybe instead of talking about the specific weapons used, is we kind of talk about the actions, like Shadow the Hedgehog would have ran it in for a touchdown, but then he got mugged.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I'm fine with that. I'm comfortable with that.
You know, like I think like it's something. It's some sort of shit goes down where I think it's just gonna be that like blue collar crime, I guess, or even white collar crime is happening around them. Around people, and like there's a financial scheme, like I imagine there's a scenario where like you know, someone would have scored, or the defense would have gone this tackle, but the defender got arrested for, you know, fraud, you know, mail fraud or something, you know, and like just shit like that. Like we could definitely flesh that out if we wanted, like in terms of GTA, just kind of make it more comfortable. The only other one that I was like a little bit iffy about was Danganronpa. My only knowledge of it is Trigger Happy Havoc. I don't know.
That's all you need.
Yeah,
that's all you need.
I imagine that a lot of that is going to be Monokuma doing some horrendous things.
We could do weird shit. We could be like high school related set pieces.
Yes. Yeah. I'm with that. Everything else I'm pretty comfortable with. I'm very excited.
I cannot wait for you to describe Pokemon things.
It won't end well. I'll tell you that. It will not end well.
The look, here comes the Pumbloom to steal the ball.
Yeah. So I think that's so and that will be incorporated. We could still have it where it's the characters interacting with each other. It won't just be like the environment fucking them over. It's a set piece to be there to allow us to build extra stories around, and it adds, like the locations end up becoming like their own characters in the story, and that's, to me, I think was just a big thing, was just having that element of it. So all down for that. So what does the next few weeks look like for VBBFL? So we are going to start contacting people and getting our 8 owners together. I think because we might have a surplus of people interested, we might have a team that's owned by 2 people instead of 1, maybe, potentially. We'll see. We'll see who we get.
Yeah.
You know, we're gonna do the draft. I think that we'll do what we did last time, where we do the draft off the podcast, and then we kind of come back and tell you guys the results. That might even be the next podcast, is the draft results. We'll see. And that, it's there's a lot of other stuff going on in our worlds, but we're gonna try our best to kind of get things organized.
Yep.
And then after that, the only other thing left to do for this would be to assign the stats, and that could be done on podcast, or if we feel like that's gonna go over, we could do some of it off. The only other thing too, the uniforms are done. The logos I don't think are close to done at the moment, but they've been concept. Yeah. So, but we don't have to worry about revealing those until probably end of August at this point. So we'll see how those end up progressing. But I love everything that I'm seeing from you guys on both of those. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the VBBFL.
I had a lot of questions for you guys. So I know you guys talked about, the environment and how that might take an effect. Do you want it in a gameplay perspective? Like, each quarter we roll a d20, and then if something happens, it can cause an obstacle for one team or the other team or for both teams. Or it's something that doesn't affect it? No?
I'd rather not it affect gameplay. I'd rather the stats affect it, because just the stats affect gameplay. And have me and Chris because part of it is me and Chris improvising on the spot. So I'd rather not have a reason and just have whatever the fuck comes off our heads in the moment be the thing that
I think that if it's something that we think it could enhance things, maybe next season we would do it, but I'm okay with it just kind of being like, this being there and existing is just good enough for us to kind of just use from the storytelling point of view of the tabletop game.
Yeah.
Rather than it being a actual factor in in affecting the gameplay and how it all ends up kind of working out. I'm okay with I like the idea of it, but I just feel like it's too much to implement right now. I think we can wait a year, see how this kind of works out, and if we like the idea of having a changing environment that does affect it, we can talk about it next year, I think.
Okay.
There's also the dumbassery type of stuff that could affect things, not from gameplays, but where so last year we would do stuff like Katamari rolled up the entire stadium into a ball.
Right. Right, that it affects it ultimately maybe affects the idea around how it's played, but it doesn't actually affect the gameplay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then my other thing was in a kind of story perspective, and you can shoot me down, but let me kind of share the whole idea. Is, let's say you have two characters on opposite teams that are both from the same universe. So let's say you have Team 1 has Mario on it, but Team 2 has Bowser on it. And now you immediately have a in-universe clash between those two. And if you wanted those to affect anything in-game, it's, because Mario is a hero character, his personal stat, he gets a +1 to offense, while Bowser now gets a +1 to his personal defense, and both teams have a slight stat change because of a personal rivalry that's happening between the two teams.
I think that's another thing that's too complicated for this year.
I think from I totally see what you're saying, and I think it could be, I think both ideas could be something that we think about for the future, because I think that part of the storytelling tabletop is how the game does affect how the story is told, and that implementing those into the game would be interesting. I kind of want to. We're kind of already changing a bit about the game right now, where I don't want to change too much of it and have too much things that we're balancing out, because both playing it and also kind of being keeping track of it can sometimes be difficult.
A lot.
Yeah.
Chris and I are not math people. Actually, Chris is more of a math person now.
I am a math person, but just not to a great extent. I think it's. I think if we had a third person that's always there with us, that's that's kind of guiding the universe a lot more, maybe, but I don't know if we want to necessarily like force that hand necessarily. Like, and like I don't want to make another person commit to doing like these streams, you know.
Okay.
So we're shooting down both your ideas.
Cool. I get it. I'm living in 2008. You guys are living in 2008.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Our cake is the lie. I see how it is.
I like both ideas. I just don't know right now if it can work with just the way that we have things set up. But again, it's an option, and I want to keep it like, let's keep it written down somewhere, and we'll come back to it. For future
just
sake.
Throwing it out there, keeping it in the backs of our brains, and we'll see how it does in future years.
Yeah.
But
Walsh, you have been on 3 straight VBB episodes, and I really appreciate you.
How does it make you feel?
Yeah.
Oh God! You know what? Look at me. I feel like I'm part of the crew.
Yeah. You are our football.
You are the football. You are the John Madden of this team.
John Madden.
The Madden 08.
Like I said, 3008.
I definitely am. I appreciate you, the amount of work that you put into this, leading up to the VBBFL from the rule sets to logos. I absolutely appreciate you, and I'm just saying that on air now in case you don't end up coming back on air during the season, or before the season starts up again, when we go to weekly episodes. Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you, our good viewers and listeners, for listening to this podcast, and I hope you are enjoying this whole setup that we are doing. And like I said, we'll see what the next episode is. It may not even be like, I think the next episode will be the draft results, but I don't know if it's going to be within the next 2 weeks. It may be maybe a week after that. Like we just, it's just for us, it's just trying our best to kind of get it organized and set up. So that's kind of our next step in the process. But yeah, and we're inching closer to the NFL season, and we'll see what kind of news and stuff kind of breaks over the course of the next few weeks as well. And we'll keep tabs on that, as always. And again, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you at some point.
Good night, and Fusroda. Virtual Ball Boys has been brought to you by Team Chaos Productions. Find us on Twitter at Virtual Ball Boys, and find more of our work at Team Chaos Pods.